ability to just get him through a lot of different matches.
Yeah, it's been a clinic for both of these players.
All right, well, Gerard, he was the 3rd seed, so he has the privilege of being on the play here, and he will do so. His Sultai deck against Seth, Manfield's blue-red twin. Gerard going ahead and stay on 7. And we'll see if Seth as well. Yeah, so Gerard, at least in the matchups he had against Ross Merriam, seemed to be able to just use his... What he did there is he used his disruption, his discard, to take away Seth's ability, or rather than that one, Ross's ability to have good counter magic. You know, he would take everything with the Dispel and then never play an instant. Yeah,
just pick the hands apart, leave them with things like Mana Leak as the game progresses, Dispel with no relevant instants. That's Gerard's plan here.
All right, turn 1 Serum Visions from Gerard. We're gonna go set up. This is an interesting thing. These decks we've been seeing in the top 8, a lot of them really don't start playing until turn 3 of the game. Look at John to 4-color control, twin, black-white tokens, Teamer Moon. No one really using the first 2 turns to do too much.
It's true. No real copies of things like Burn or Infect in our top 8. We used to have a trifecta on the Open Series, which was Legacy Open Win, Standard Open Win, and Draft Challenge Open Win, back when those were a thing. Now we have a new trifecta, which is Legacy, Standard, and Modern, and Gerard Fabiano with an opportunity to have the trifecta locked up, the first ever Modern Open Series.
Now, you know, if you throw in Team Sealed, he's got all 4 of them, too.
Sure. And I think he might have won a Draft Open, too, so that's all 5.
Well, still needs an invitational, but right. Yeah, very impressive record on the SCG Open Series.
I suppose the Players' Championship win as well, which he almost got in 2014.
All right, back over to Gerard. Second land is Dark Slick Shores. We'll passing back to Seth. Once again, these empty turns on the first couple turns really has made Serum Visions, I guess, the standout card of the top 8. I think almost every deck here in the top 8 running, with the exception of Black-White Tokens, has been running Serum Visions.
Yeah, a much maligned cantrip relative to the power level of the Legacy cantrips, but clearly more than good enough for a very powerful format.
All right, now on to turn 3, maybe where our action will begin. We're on Gerard Fabiano's side. It'll be Overgrown Tomb tapped. No plays here yet from him. It'll be back to Seth Manfield. He has a basic of each in play, Mountain and Island, and it'll just be a 3rd land from him. It is back to Gerard.
And a critical card in the matchup, I think, for Gerard, not that you would think it's that important, is something like Tassiger. Because Gerard wants to get something into play while leaving up mana to protect himself. As the game progresses, Tassiger is just going to be a 1-mana 4/5. It's going to be hard for Seth to get it off the table. And if Seth initiates a counter war over it, well, Gerard can fire back with his own Mana Leaks and Cryptic Commands and so forth.
Yeah, land 4 from Gerard is played. He passes the turn. Seth is going to fetch for another basic on end step, and we'll see whether or not he goes for one of his creatures on end step or has a play here. Likely so. It's going to be Vendilion Click, not the one of the combo creatures, but a great play nonetheless.
It's a great way to open up the 3rd turn. It's a non-essential element. It gives information if it resolves, and it's one of those deals where if it gets countered, great, and if it resolves, also great.
Yeah, Gerard not wanting to show that information right now. He'll go ahead and Mana Leak the Vendilion Click, and now we go back to Seth's turn 4. Can he keep making the land drops? Can he keep playing? One thing we actually saw with the deck in the top 8 of Jeff Hoagland, and I guess also Ross Merriam too when he played Gerard earlier, is that the twin decks and just the blue decks in general have had a lot of trouble going late against Gerard's Sultai deck.
Exactly, and you know, there's a lot of power in it. You know, cards like Cryptic Command and Snapcaster Mage, we know all about that. But I think a lot of it is also Gerard can apply pressure with cheap cards, be it Tassiger, be it Tarmogoyf, and that allows him to threaten the board while also leaving up his ability to counter things. Compare that to, say, John Sukenik's deck, where he really struggled to leave up counter spells and threaten pressure.
Yeah, we go over to this turn. Seth going to main phase a Deceiver Exarch. He wants to untap his island. Gerard is going to hold with that trigger on the stack, however. Perhaps some sort of Abrupt Decay, some kill spell. That's just for Breeding Pool. And yeah, it looks to be Abrupt Decay. Not even going to let Seth untap the land. Deceiver Exarch will hit, and then Seth untaps. Playing land number 4, and then he'll pass, Scalding Tarn. And so far, this resource trade, we've seen Mana Leak for Vendilion Click, Abrupt Decay for Deceiver Exarch, and now Inquisition of Kozilek. This really feeds into Gerard's game plan.
Yeah, this is, I mean, if he's got something like Tarmogoyf or Tassiger to follow up with, you're seeing, you know, the Gerard Fabiano clinic on display here. Get something cheap into play, strip apart your hand, leave yourself with a lot of power left over. But you can see Seth with a bit of a dead-end hand right now. I mean,
yeah, Flame Slash, Electrolyze, land number 5, and 2 copies of Remand.
Remand is not a bad card to have here in Seth's position if you're worried about Tassiger. Makes it pretty cumbersome to get Tassiger into play, but still, a hand with nothing going on, and these are the types of hands that Gerard really picks apart with his discard, leaving you with dead or inefficient cards.
Yeah, I mean, Gerard can just basically work his way through these remands, and especially if his threat is something like Tarmogoyf, he'll be able to do it fairly quickly.
Yep.
See, Gerard just has to take one of the 2 copies of Remand, leaving with Electrolyze and Flame Slash.
And the problem is with Tarmogoyf or with Tassiger in the spot is Seth, even if Gerard can fight through the remand, has the ability to Flame Slash and Electrolyze. So the first big body is not going to stick right now. That said, it really limits Seth's resources going forward.
And Snapcaster Mage from Gerard. It looks like he may just go for another Inquisition of Kozilek here. It would get the remand, I would assume.
Right, Seth's just going to remand the flashback on the spell, I'm pretty positive.
Yeah, likely Gerard will take the remand if he gets the chance, so might as well get a card off it if you're Seth.
Exactly.
And that's what he'll do. Scalding Tarn's going to go ahead and fetch. And it's a pretty aggressive play, actually, from Gerard, knowing that there's another remand for this line.
Well, I assume he has something big that he's building towards right now. He's got to get through the remand anyway. This also might incentivize Seth to use his Electrolyze on the Snapcaster Mage, which means that if Gerard has one of his 5 toughest creatures, Tassiger or Tarmogoyf, now all of a sudden the coast is clear.
So this is perhaps, yeah, a setup for Tassiger.
Right. You know, at some point, you know, Seth's got a lot of cheap instances in his hand, a lot of ways to interact. You just have to slog through this stuff with non-critical pieces so you can eventually land something big like Tarmogoyf or Tassiger.
And Remand on the flashback spell will draw a card for Seth. Land 5 from Gerard is another Dark Six Shores, and it'll go back over to Seth. His turn 5, what can he do with it? He untaps with an Electrolyze, a Flame Slash, a Stomping Ground, and 1 other card. But no threats and very little pressure. Actually behind on the board. And this is how we've really seen this Sultai deck just pick apart the Twin decks this weekend.
Right, everything that goes on is some piece of the puzzle. And Gerard's able to initiate these little fights, just throwing these jabs, for so little mana and not these critical resources, and that's very punishing for Twin.
Well, looks like there's a threat here from Seth. It's going to be a Pestermite. That was his draw for the turn. Go ahead and play it. Untapping. Looks like it could be an island, but we know that he doesn't have much. Well, he has one other card we don't know about. He drew a card off the remand and then one for turn. So don't know the last card. Stomping Ground is his play for the turn. So Electrolyze, Flame Slash, and 1 Mystery in his hand. And he'll actually just use the main phase mana, Electrolyze away the Snapcaster, 1 to it, 1 to Gerard, and draw.
Yeah, not a shabby turn there from Seth at all.
But Gerard, he's set up for some big payoff card, and we're going to see what it is here. And it is, as suspected, copy of Tassiger. Gerard can play it for 1. He gets to delve everything but 1 card, and he'll leave Abrupt Decay in his graveyard.
Right, this is a great setup. And I think that if Seth has Splinter Twin, you might see him just go for it, because
it's going to get bad real fast.
It's getting bad real fast.
With just Flame Slash in his hand before that, not many plays against this active Tassiger.
I know that Seth, you know, a player that good does not like throwing caution to the wind like that and just crossing your fingers and hoping, but Gerard is setting up a really powerful shop right now.
Yeah, so by playing Tassiger on 1 with 4 mana up, he's going to start drawing extra cards as soon as this turn. Not to mention, if Gerard just mills 2 lands here, that Abrupt Decay in the graveyard is pretty lights out. Misty Rainforest and Damnation, the other card.
All right, well, I guess it's Damnation.
Right. It's not Abrupt Decay, but if you're Seth, you don't like the fact that you're giving him removal. That's for sure.
It's at least sorcery speed removal. And if it's something that Gerard has to pull the trigger on, the Tassiger's off the table, and you're back to parity.
Gerard tapped out, seeing if Seth will make another play here. Answer is no. Gerard gets to untap. Go to Gerard's 7th turn. Another land into play. Tassiger swings for 4. And on top of a card advantage engine, Tassiger actually profitably races the Pestermite.
Yeah, Gerard's getting it kind of locked up here from all the angles. It really depends on what the last cards in his hand are. If he has a piece of instant speed removal for the Pestermite, you feel like he's got a really commanding edge.
And Cryptic Command, cast here by Seth. Looking for the modes, but not going to matter. Gerard's going to go ahead and go for a Mana Leak on the Cryptic. Tempting to bounce draw off the on the Tassiger. Pastor swings for 2 more. Gerard down to 11.
And that's the second very powerful card now in the graveyard for Tasker to get back.
Yeah. Tasker activation, Ashiok, Snapcaster Mage, Mana Leak, and Abrupt Decay in the yard for Gerard now.
I'm going to guess this is Ashiok.
Yeah, I don't. There you go. Gives him the Ashiok.
Seth can't let him have any of those other cards.
Yeah, Tasker comes in. Seth goes down to 8. 2 more swings will make it lethal. Gerard going to go ahead and just deploy Tarmogoyf here. Ups the clock by a turn. Now 8 damage on his side. Can Seth draw into that Splinter Twin? And if he does Gerard have the removal anyway?
Right, and I think Gerard is sitting on Cryptic Command as well in all of this.
And here's Splinter Twin from Manfield. He did draw the card. Does Gerard have the counter? And if so, can Seth counter back? Here's his best shot.
Yeah, Seth played very, very well to get the game to the spot to give himself the most chances at it.
Tapping out Cryptic. Does Seth have the counter? What is his last card? Gerard will put him to the test. And it does work. The last card from Seth, not a counter spell. And game 1 goes to Gerard Fabiano.
Big sweat there. Seth, with a lot of looks at it, played very, very well, but just could not find another counter spell to play back against that Cryptic Command.
All right, game 1 in Gerard Fabiano's favor. And as those players go to sideboard, we will look at the sideboards as well. So starting out on Seth Manfield's side, this is a pretty tough matchup for him. And we've seen some players like Jeff Hoagland go for a Blood Moon style strategy against Gerard. What are your thoughts on that in this game?
I think the Blood Moons are fine to bring in here. Gerard does have some workarounds. He's got 4 basic lands in the deck, but it is a way to steal the game and puts a lot of pressure on Gerard to play his counter spells in a particular fashion, just like we saw in the top 4 against Jonathan Skenik, where the risk of Blood Moon changes the way the game plays out. I think you're also going to see cards like Jace Architect, Keranos negate sort of the bigger and better stuff come in here as well, play a bit of a longer game.
Yeah, on Gerard's side, just a lot more of interaction. We've seen him do this against Twin before. Extra Thoughtseize, Knight of Souls Material, a great card against Splinter Twin. We've seen it really lock Twin players out of the game before. If Seth's on more of a value creature strategy, Knight of Souls Betrayal is really hard to get around.
Right, it's just challenging on Vendilion Click, Snapcaster Mage, not to mention the combo. The Vendilion Click is just a good addition here of Thoughtseize. The Nature's Claim answers both Splinter Twin and Blood Moon if it happens to slip through the cracks. And the 2 copies of Spellskite will likely come in here as well, so they're more disruption for the combo.
So some pretty interesting things with our leaderboard here. You see the 5 next to Gerard's name. With a win here, Gerard will launch himself into 2nd place in the Season 1 standings, actually putting himself within striking range of Jim Davis with just 2 events to go. Say 2 events to go because in 2 weeks we go to Dallas. We don't have an SCG Open next week because next week is when we're going to be going down to Miami for the Grand Prix.
Yeah, we're going to have a Santa Grand Prix in Miami. We've been here before for a Grand Prix, which was an excellent story. Reed Duke winning that event. Next weekend, we've been running the slides. A lot of stuff is planned here. I would suggest pre-registering if you haven't done that already. And we are very much looking forward to this event. StarCityGames.com/Grand Prix GP Miami, to find out more information right now.
All right, yeah. Pretty exciting to have another open, or rather another Grand Prix run by SCG. You and Cedric are going to be covering it. Like I said, standard. And let me tell you, it's a great, if you're on the East Coast, or like for me in the Midwest, this is a great time of the year to take a trip to Miami.
Oh, it is quite nice. I'm spoiled by living in San Diego, but we were down there for Miami, and last year over the summer, a little humid during the days, but very nice at night. And I think the winter time is about ideal to get down there.
You know, yeah, it's certainly great there all the time.
I'm not sure if my body would have the tolerance to go someplace cold also. So pretty happy to be going to Miami next weekend.
All right. So Seth gets to be on the play for game 2. And with that, he does have some shot to try to just combo fast in this matchup, though it seems like that still is going to be pretty tough with the kind of cards Gerard's bringing.
Right, I mean, you're looking at Mana Leak and Abrupt Decay. That's already a pretty challenging base to go off fast. Gerard also gets access to Spellskite, which makes it even harder. So I think Seth is basically going to try to do what you saw him do in the top 4, which is play a long game, try to use the more powerful cards in his deck, like Jace, Architect of Thought, Batterskull, Keranos, to threaten Gerard that way, while using the threat of the combo and the threat of Blood Moon to bottleneck Gerard's action in his proactive plan.
Yeah.
The big difference here versus the match that Seth just got through in the top 4 is Gerard can add something to the board that's very big, very threatening, and very cheap. It's very different than the Snapcaster Mage Lingering Souls plan that John Sukenik was on, which is very cumbersome in the face of Seth's counterspells and ability to deploy Blood Moon.
Yeah, you look at it, I mean, first of all, he has discard spells, so that Seth can't actually just sculpt the perfect hand. And after that, yeah, Gerard does have some pretty lean and powerful threats. That 1-mana Tasigur has just been great for him in these twin matchups.
Yeah, and I've been really impressed by the synergy between Cryptic Command and Tasigur. You just pass with 4 mana up. It's not clear to your opponent whether or not you have Cryptic Command because you have something to do with the 4 mana anyway. If your opponent tries to do something, Cryptic Command's a great response. If your opponent tries to do nothing, Tasigur's a great way to use your 4 mana.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So if you're in a Seth spot, you still try to go for the control plan, but it just doesn't, I don't know. If I'm in Seth spot, I don't really know how much I expect it to work.
Well, he does have some cards that are pretty easy to cut here. He's got 4 copies of Lightning Bolt. Those can pretty easily hit the bench. The electrolyzes are not great here, though possibly you just don't cut the electrolyze because the game goes on for a long time and it does something and cycles, but I think there's enough inefficient tools. He can get away from some of his copies of Splinter Twin. He wants to leave in some of the combo, but he certainly doesn't need all 4 copies because he's going to be de-emphasizing it a little bit. I'm not saying it's a great game plan, but I think it's better than just trying to ram his head through all of Gerard's defenses and trying to sneak through a fast Splinter Twin win. I just don't think that's working a high percentage of the time, especially post-board with Gerard having access to more disruption and copies of Spellskite.
Yeah, and he does also still have that Blood Moon plan, and we saw him use that to pretty decent effect against Jonathan Sukenik. It was being able to use the Blood Moon as an early threat that you could overload. You'd overload the end step to land a Blood Moon, and then use the fact that Blood Moon would cripple his opponent's mana to then eventually force the twin combo through.
Right. But Gerard's deck can function through Blood Moon a little bit better than Jonathan Sukenik's deck. You know, Gerard has 2 swamps, an island, 2 islands, a swamp, and a forest, and his color mana requirements are not that sensitive. So if he's able to fetch his basics, he may be able to operate through a Blood Moon. The same thing was not true with Jonathan Sukenik's deck. Even though he had some basics, playing an effective game of Magic through Blood Moon was not something his deck was equipped to do.
Oh, definitely agree. It just seemed that Jonathan never had time to make a threat. The fact that he didn't, you know, he had so little threats and they cost 3 mana, which he never really had time to do. Very impressed by cards like Tarmogoyf and Tasigur on Gerard's side.
Yeah, doing something cheap, getting out in front of the twin player and force them to play a somewhat reactive game instead of just allowing them to sit there and sculpt the perfect hand and periodically pepper you with Exarchs and Pestermites at the end of the turn where you don't know how much to value them. You know, it's really important to get the jump on them.
All right, well, underway, game 2 here. Gerard, Fabiano, Seth, Manfield. This is your finals of the Modern Open here in Baltimore. Gerard up a game, has not dropped a game in the top 8. Seth Manfield, your Pro Tour top 8 competitor, looking for a victory here, though. He can mount a comeback. Fetch land from Seth. Gerard will have his discard spell. This one is going to be Inquisition. We'll see what Seth has worked with.
Yeah, I thought for a minute there with that upside-down overgrown tomb that Gerard was channeling Adrian Sullivan, but it appears that he just put it into play in the wrong direction.
Snapcaster Mage, Dispel, Deceiver, Exarch, and 3 more lands is the holding for Seth. What I like about this hand is that this is the type of hand that can be very quick at putting together a twin combo.
Right. And Gerard has to choose between the value game plan and taking something like Dispel or Snapcaster Mage, or trying to put Seth off the combo when he doesn't even know how much the combo matters to Seth post-board.
Yeah, by leaving Dispel and Snapcaster Mage, it does seem like Gerard is opening himself up to the possibility, or by leaving Dispel rather than Deceiver and Exarch, there's a possibility that Seth has a really fast combo kill, and even though he's leaving Seth the big value card in Snapcaster Mage, he's really defending himself from any early game shenanigans.
The other rationalization there for taking Deceiver Exarch is Gerard, if Gerard has a follow-up discard spell, he wants the flexibility of taking another combo piece if that's shown up, and if not, he can go strip the Snapcaster Mage out of the hand.
Well, in the meantime, Seth's going to go ahead and use this Serum Visions to try to find some more action. Serum Visions draws into Misty Rainforest, but he'll get 2 Scries to try to find something he actually wants here. And it looks like neither of those are it either, so the Serum Visions gets him through a lot of dead cards, but no necessary action for Seth yet. And Sulfur falls for the turn. We'll pass back over to Gerard. You see Gerard with a copy of his main deck of a Golgari Charm in the main deck in his hand.
Answers Pestermite, along with all the other one-touchless creatures, also a way to get an enchantment off the table.
And it'll be time away from Gerard. Already up to 3-4, we have Sorcery, Creature, and Land all in the graveyard. Instant not added just yet.
and Seth with only one copy of Flame Slash in his list. And the other red cards are not going to be very effective here.
Land 3 from Manfield. He can fire off the Snapcaster Mage to go get more Serum Visions. It won't shrink the Tarmogoyf. You can just close that in the yard, but Seth is going to make the play. Looks like Serum Vision's fine. I think he draws him into yet another land.
Seems like a fine time to stick this. He can't really do anything about the Tarmogoyf, so while Gerard's shields are down, at least try to improve your hand.
So Serum Vision's not finding great cards, but this time at least it scryed one to the top for Seth, so he'll have something to work with next turn as he passes back over to Gerard Fabiano. 3-4 Tarmogoyf, though, sizes up pretty well against 2-1 Snapcaster Mage. Now that Gerard has his clock online, it gives him a lot of leeway to leave mana open.
Yeah, absolutely, especially because this threat is so hard for Seth to get off the table.
Yeah, swing of 3, Seth is down to 16. And looking over at Gerard's side, he is ready for a fight. Mana Leak, Golgari Charm, Maelstrom Pulse, and additional lands all available to him in his hand.
All right.
Please briefly review the standings.
Yeah, you can see some confidence here. He's going to go ahead and shock for Breeding Pool. And it looks like it's going to be Snapcaster Mage on Inquisition. Going ahead and tap out once to see what Seth has added. And yeah, it is not much. Now 3 lands Dispel Remand.
Right, and what's so good about this now is even if Blood Moon rolls off the top, Gerard's got 1 basic land in play and a sizable board presence.
Yep, takes the Remand, so just Dispel left in Seth's hand. And as we saw in the match with Ross Miriam at the beginning of today, Dispel actually can be a pretty dead card against Gerard's deck.
Yeah, Gerard's got some very solid targets, but there's very few in the deck, and when he knows about it, he can use his mana doing other things.
Yeah, Serum Visions from Seth will let him once again search for something. This is his 3rd Serum Visions. The first 2 were not particularly helpful to him. One of the downsides with Serum Visions is that the actual draw off the card is pretty much done in the dark.
Right. It's a variance reducing cantrip, not a variance crippling cantrip like some of the legacy analogs.
Just, oh yeah, this will find me whatever I need. So, no, it'll let you draw what you need next turn.
It's somewhere in between Ancestral Recall and a Demonic Tutor, I guess, Brainstorm. Serum Vision's kind of a different animal.
That's not even that far off. That's the thing. Brainstorm just that good. No, we go back over to Gerard's turn. Fulminator Mage among his cards here. One I wasn't sure if he would bring in. That shows a lot of respect, I think, for the Desolate Lighthouse in the matchup for him to board that in.
Right, and it might also be just a function of trying to get some of his less efficient tools out of the deck. Not everything he's dealing with is very good here. Like Thorad Tusk, for example, I think can pretty safely hit the bench.
Swing from Gerard, the Snapcaster Mage's trade, but Tarmogoyf crashes in for 4. Now instant added with that Remand. Seth will drop down to 12. It's only 3 more attacks away from being lethal as we go back to Seth's turn.
Mana Leak and Maelstrom Pulse left over in Gerard's hand.
It's got some action. Golgari Charm as well. No land that turn from Gerard, so Seth could pull ahead on lands here. You see Desolate Lighthouse is playing his land for the turn. A pretty good one at that.
Right, but still the difference here between Gerard's deck and Jonathan's deck. Yes, Seth is pulling ahead on lands, but he may not have that much time to leverage it.
Yeah, there sure is a Tarmogoyf here as Seth goes down to 8 on this attack.
All right, legacy players, I want to remind
He does not have many turns to set up what he needs to do.
Do not use any
And step Deceiver Exarch from Manfield.
With that, welcome to round 9. Good luck. Have fun.
We know Gerard has some counter magic, but he knows Seth has Dispel. Gerard may not be able to fight the counter where he wants to fight. He does have Golgari Charm and could. We've talked about how there's that awkward fight when you have a creature with Splinter Twin on it and Golgari Charm facing off against each other.
Right, I think that I like getting the Mana Leak to be played at the spot. I guess the flip side is that if he commits the 2 mana, Seth fires back with his Dispel, taps into the land, and now Golgari Charm's off the table. So Gerard kind of has to keep it honest here.
Yep, and he's just going to go ahead and let the land get tapped. And Seth wills, this is going to be the turn. He's going to make his move. It is Splinter Twin.
And now Gerard can only react with one thing. It's either Golgari Charm or Mana Leak. Neither of those are good enough in the face of the Dispel.
Well, he can Mana Leak here. Seth can Dispel back. And yeah, you're right. He can't use Golgari Charm, and that'll be it for Manfield.
Yeah, great sequencing there, and you can see the jam that Gerard got into when Seth cast the Deceiver Exarch. The Golgari Charm does nothing in that spot, and if he plays the Mana Leak, he knows Seth can fire back with the Dispel, then taps into the land. There's no way for Gerard to play both of his spells there the Golgari Charm and the Mana Leak cannot be deployed in the same turn.
Exarch's going to get his land.
Right, and for Gerard to get out of that jam, he needs to be able to cast both Mana Leak and Golgari Charm to good effect, and Seth prevented him from doing that.
Yeah, and you see that? That's, mentioned in one turn that Gerard had missed his 5th land drop, and it seemed pretty innocuous. Gerard with, some good control cards in hand and a Tarmogoyf beating in. How much could the 5th land cost you? And turns out it costs quite a bit.
Absolutely.
These players, we're going to have a 3rd game. This is the first game taken off Gerard. Whether he'll be able to come back game 3, we'll see in a second here as they go sideboard up for the last one.
Yeah, unblemished thus far through the top 8, a 2-0 win, another 2-0 win, but like I said, I think this is going to be one of his toughest challenges of the entire tournament. He's played against a lot of twin players, but Seth, a different caliber of player.
Yeah, even though Seth takes game 2, it still feels like he is just hanging on in this matchup.
Yeah, I think this also might be Seth's biggest challenge of the tournament as well, both in terms of matchup and player quality on the other side of the table.
All right, those of you looking toward our schedule, one thing we announced the remaining schedules of our year a little bit ago. We're going to look at our quarter 3 schedule. This is the one that starts in the middle of June. It builds up toward our 3rd Invitational here on the East Coast in New Jersey. Starting June 12th and 14th, we're hosting Modern, and this isn't an SCG Open. This is a Modern Grand Prix over in Charlotte.
Yeah, and so we've had a record-breaking limited Grand Prix back in the day in Charlotte. We've also had a record-breaking Modern Grand Prix in Richmond. I'm pretty sure Charlotte's going to be a huge event. We then go to Indianapolis, Baltimore, and Chicago for the first time in Open Series history for Standard Opens. Richmond after that, a Modern Open very close to here in DC, a Standard Grand Prix in London, August 14th through 16th, then a Legacy Open back in Charlotte, and then the Season 3 Invitational in New Jersey. Standard and Legacy as the Invitational formats with a Standard Open Series attached, August 28th through 30th with me, you, and Cedric Phillips calling the show.
All right, pretty good lineup of events there in Season 3. Players going back, checking each other's deck lists. Remember, that's something you do get to do in the top 8. And how much did Seth actually utilize his sideboard here? It looks like he brought in the Dispel and Negate. We didn't see any of his haymakers, something like Keranos or Jace.
Well, the game was just played on a really short front. Both players, I think the game was over there by turn 5. Gerard was missing some land drops, so he didn't really see those cards come into play, but I'm sure Seth's happy just getting the easy Splinter Twin kill there instead of having to slog through with Batterskull and Keranos, those cards are definitely powerful, but trying to play the control game against Gerard's deck, I think Gerard has an edge there.
I wonder how much that plan of Keranos, Jace, Batterskull would even work against Gerard's deck. In each of these games, it just feels like as soon as we start hitting turn 6, things just seem grim for Seth.
That is true, but I just don't know how
the cards he boards out don't do anything.
Right, he's got these 4 lightning bolts that I feel are very easy to cut, and there really aren't that many sideboard slots you need to bring in to have the control package. You're looking at a couple counter spells. Those are pretty easy to bring in, the Dispel and the Negate. After that, do you have Blood Moon, yes or no? And if the answer is no, then Keranos and Batterskull and Jace have to look like the next most attractive options. And we're only talking about the 4 lightning bolts. Once you get past that, there's some other cards where, maybe you don't want both copies of Electrolyze. Maybe the 2 Grim Lava Masters can come out of the deck pretty easily.
There's some pretty weak cards here.
So I think that Seth can mostly keep his combo intact, side into some controlling cards, and not take away from the core game plan because he's got some inefficient tools in his game 1 deck.
One thing I do want to look at, mentioned that Gerard does have a copy of Knight of Souls Betrayal. If that card lands, what can Seth do about that? As far as the twin combo, he may just be out of luck.
Right, he has the Cryptic Command to get off the table. There's no twin combo once you get to that point. And even some of the secondary plans like Vendilion, Clicks, and Snapcaster Mages to try to value through that way, those don't work either. That's another reason to maybe have some cards like Keranos, Batterskull, and Jace Architect of Thought in your deck, so you still have a shot of winning if Knight of Souls Betrayal sticks.
All right, well, this is it, our deciding game between Seth Manfield and Gerard Fabiano. Gerard will be back on the play as he was in game 1. He has a Sultai deck versus Seth Manfield, hoping to get their blue-red twin. Both players keeping on 7 as we are underway. Gerard starting off on a fetch for Breeding Pool, likely a Serum Visions on turn 1 here. It's what we've been seeing all weekend, just these setups on the first couple turns. Looking at the control cards Gerard has in hand, we see Mana Leak among others. Looks like he has land set up. Did scry to the bottom here, however. Maybe looking for something a little more.
And it's so nice for Gerard to be able to spend some of these setup turns also using discard spells if he's feeling so inclined.
And no discard just yet. Fires off another Serum Visions, draws another land. Maybe a little heavy on those right now. Looks like he has a lot of blue permission, but I'm not sure how much discard he has going for him at the moment.
I think we're going to see him fire off if he has one.
It's going to be creeping tar pit instead. Passes back to Seth. And just a second land, so some cantripping for Gerard and just land drops for Seth. See which person wants to make one of their moves first. We do see Gerard looks like has a copy of Tassiger in his hand. He has done a great job of filling up his graveyard to this point.
And the Tassiger is so nice in conjunction with Mana Leak because it makes it very likely that Gerard's going to be able to push it through, get something going here.
Yeah, Misty Rainforest, his play for the turn, another fetch land. He is very close to just being able to play Tassiger on one. And Seth will go ahead and go for a fetch. And with no Serum Visions in Seth's hand, it's really just making land drops for his first few turns.
But, you know, it's a little easy to say, a little early to say, but so far so good for Gerard, making his land drops, more land drops left over in hand. You can see the twin player can really capitalize on an opponent who's bottlenecked on mana, even someone with multiple pieces of response. I mean, Gerard had Mana Leak and Golgari Charm, stuck on 4 mana, and wasn't good enough.
Yeah, and one of the things is that since Gerard hasn't had a discard spell, he's not entirely sure what he's up against on Seth's side. There is, you know, like you said, there's that stress of playing against blue-red twin.
Yeah. And I think this is a bit of a telltale sign here from Seth. He went ahead and got the island with that Scalding Tarn. Doesn't necessarily mean that he has Blood Moon, but it means he's certainly setting it up.
Yeah, not getting a dual land. And we'll go back over to Gerard, end step fetch. He's going to go for the first play. This is going to be an end turn Vendilion Click from Fabiano. Give him that information on Seth's hand to use. Also get him a threat in play.
Right, use your mana at the end of Seth's turn, untap and go into your turn with all of your mana. That's more or less the game plan here. And if something happens to this Vendilion Click, that gives an opportunity for Gerard to push through Tassiger for only 1 mana, which is great as well. Gerard's at a spot where he doesn't even really care if this Vendilion Click gets hit with an Electrolyze, which is really saying a lot.
Yeah, now Seth does have an opportunity. He could resolve one of his 1/4s in this situation. But you're right, it is going to be Electrolyze. Seth keeping those in for the 2-for-1. And now we'll get to see Seth's hand. It is Negate, Remand, Snapcaster Mage, 2 additional lands, one of which is Desolate Lighthouse. Pretty big deal. Dispel and V-Click.
And Gerard going to do us a solid here by actually laying out the hand. No answer to Tassiger forthcoming.
Yeah, and that is significant.
No combo in hand, but a very powerful hand.
That said, we know Gerard has the Tassiger, and with 5 cards in his graveyard, that just may be enough. It certainly put a lot of pressure on Seth to get something going here.
This feels like the type of hand where you're either taking Snapcaster Mage or you're taking nothing. I don't think the counterspells matter all that much. Vendilion Click also a fine option here, but I don't think Gerard has to worry too much about the counterspells in hand if his plan is to get Tassiger into play.
And that's the kind of situation, you know, that sort of hand would have been just excellent against Jonathan Sekenik's deck last round. You know, it's very hard for a blue deck to break through that wall that Seth had put up here with Snapcaster Mage, Dispel, Remand, Negate. You know, you're not going to win a counter war very often against that.
Another possibility there with Gerard taking the Vendilion Click is basically Seth's counter spell to Abrupt Decay, and you can get it out of the hand. So if Gerard's leading on Abrupt Decay as defense, then the Vendilion Click's the most threatening card in the hand.
Now it is Tassiger from Gerard. He opts to pay 2 so that he does not have to delve his copy of Vendilion Click that turn, but he delves the rest of the cards in his graveyard. And now with his threat online, Gerard can enter the defensive strategy here and force Seth to do something.
And we know that Seth's hand, at least as it was composed when we saw it through Vendilion Click, is just spinning its tires. There's nothing threatening going on in that hand. It may be able to defend itself for a little while, but in terms of threatening a Splinter Twin kill, or even just getting to one of his big cards like Keranos, that's not a threat that Gerard has to worry about right now.
Yeah, Scalding Tarn to play for Seth. No other lands as of yet. Opting for Scalding Tarn over something like Desolate Lighthouse.
Perhaps an indication that Cryptic Command has been drawn in the intervening turns.
Absolutely. Tassiger will swing in. That's for 4 damage. Gerard is starting to get work on Seth's life total. 19 goes down to 15. 4 damage comes across. Tap land into play for Gerard, and that may just be it.
Yeah, we've seen Gerard sit on his heels like this before. holding up mana for counter spells or removal, and if nothing pressing happens, go ahead and activate Tasigur.
And he will go ahead and pass the turn. So is the Cryptic there for Seth? He may go for something like an end step bounce draw if he has it, to take Gerard off some of his mana.
The thing is, with a Dispel in hand, I'm really not that big of a fan of Seth firing off the Cryptic Command right now if he has it, because he has a pretty easy opportunity to play it the next turn with backup.
Provided he has another blue.
And that might be the bottleneck right now. If his only land left over is the Desolate Lighthouse, he may just have to fire it off.
Yeah. We see here, and this is that fetch for basic island that we were mentioning. Trying to get that third blue in play. This is on Gerard's end step. If you're fetching for a basic on end step, it's probably going to go for a spell. And that is the bounce draw for Cryptic Command. Gerard, though, with Mana Leak at the ready, this is worth protecting.
This also might be an attempt on Seth's side to force through a Blood Moon on the follow-up with the Dispel. The Cryptic Command is good enough to bait out a counter, most certainly. And if this is an opportunity to push through a Blood Moon, there's no certainty that that's a game-winning play, draw with a swamp and an island, but it's at least a starting point.
Land 5 is the Desolate Lighthouse from Manfield. Those are the two lands Gerard knew about. Gerard still knows about Snapcaster Mage, Dispel, Remand, and Negate, and it looks like Seth with no main phase play here. Was hoping the Cryptic Command would stick. At the very least, he gets a Mana Leak out of Gerard's hand. So Gerard goes to attack, and it's Deceiver Exarch tapping down Tasigur.
And it's starting to get a little bit threatening here on Gerard's side of the table. You know your opponent has a whole lot of counter spells in his hand. He's willing to fire off a Cryptic Command. It felt just to bait out a counter spell. We're not sure if that's a mentality, but it has that feel to it.
It did look like it, yeah.
And the Splinter Twin kill starts to get a little bit threatening here.
See here, Gerard looking at possibly activating Tasigur. If he get, he'll go for Mana Leak on Deceiver Exarch. Had a second one in hand. He knows about Negate and Remand in Seth's hand, so no guarantee this one's gonna work. And Dispel, plenty of counter spells.
And this might be one of those spots where there's no guarantee that Seth allows him to use the Mana Leak the next turn.
And Gerard just with enough mana to win the counter war. Seth goes for Negate on the Mana Leak. Gerard, Snapcaster Mage on another Mana Leak to Mana Leak the Negate, and the counter war goes in Gerard's favor in a big way.
Yeah, that's a huge deal. I mean, if that Deceiver Exarch gets into play, it's not like Gerard suddenly losing the game. Seth still needs to find Splinter Twin, but with all the permission Seth has access to, it starts getting very dangerous. As long as the board's clear, Gerard's in full command of the game.
Yeah, with a Deceiver Exarch in play and a Dispel in hand, Seth is really just a top deck Splinterton away from winning the game. Gerard, do not believe, has one of his copies of Abrupt Decay in hand to put a stop to that. And now, with Seth down to 10, Snapcaster Mage takes a turn off of Seth's clock. 6 damage per turn. Seth is going to need to have one of his Exarchs on end step here so that he can untap and win with it. Go back to Gerard's turn. With Seth at 10, he certainly has him on the ropes. 6 lands in play for Gerard. Possible 9 damage if you factor in Creeping Tar Pit, but 9's not 10. Still looks like 2 turns.
And Gerard has been so conservative over the course of this tournament, not pushing all in spots where he looks like he's favored, playing around the opponent basically having the perfect hand. I think Gerard, there's almost no chance he fires up the Creeping Tar Pit and says, I'll get you for as much as I can.
Well, he knows Seth has a Snapcaster Mage in hand as well, so something like Snapcaster Electrolyze would be an issue. Gerard will just go ahead and swing for 6 with the 2 creatures. See whether or not Seth, he may be forced to play his Snapcaster here. It's a lot of damage to take if he doesn't.
And the Tasigur then becomes lethal, so it warrants a response for the remainder of the game.
No time to use Desolate Lighthouse, and yeah, this will be Snapcaster Mage. Targeting Electrolyze, gonna try to blunt some of the damage here. By using Electrolyze on Snapcaster, he can take 4, he gets a chump block off Snapcaster Mage. It's the way that buys him the most turns. And that's gonna be the line. Gerard down to 15, Seth down to 6, but draws a card.
I'm curious to see if Seth wants to chump block here. This might be his only opportunity to do so. It looks like he's going to take the hit here.
Go down to 6.
A little bit dangerous because, again, no guarantee he gets a chump block somewhere down the line. If Gerard has something like an Abrupt Decay that's sitting in his pocket or a Golgari Charm, Snapcaster Mage may just die without an opportunity to block.
Yeah. That's what he's going to do. Not go to 10. He'll just take the chump block. Not go to 6 rather. Stay at 10 with the chump block.
Right. That's a play that I see a lot of players commonly make a mistake with. Is they want to wait to chump block until the last possible minute. But in spots like this where you know the Snapcaster Mage is going to be committed to a chump block, you want to get in when you know you can do it, because there's no guarantee that window stays open for the rest of the game.
Yeah, and if you're not ever really going to attack or bounce the Snapcaster for value, I mean, there's not much to be gained by waiting.
Right.
And Gerard is going to go ahead and go for the aggressive kill here. Tarmogoyf made this turn. Tarmogoyf is currently a 3-4.
But you see Gerard, no cards in hand.
Yeah,
So
shields
it's
are down.
very possible that Seth can cobble together the kill.
He did get a draw off Electrise, another draw for the turn. He has land 6 in play. If he has the combo together, he may be able to get this. It looks like he can take maybe an attack for 1 turn.
Well, Gerard still has that Creeping Tar Pit, and if Gerard finds no defense, he can fire up the Creeping Tar Pit and try to go for it right now.
Yeah, Tassiger going to get 2 cards in the graveyard. Certainly, Gerard won't get the copy of Abrupt Decay. We see Mana Leak, Snapcaster Mage, Tarmogoyf. Seth may just give him a Tarmogoyf at this point if he's dead on the next turn anyway.
Doesn't seem like it really changes very much. I mean, all the instants seem like they're much more punishing.
Yeah, Tarmogoyf is the card given. So now Gerard getting to untap. Seth is at 10. Gerard with 7 power in play, 10 with the Creeping Tar Pit. By acting Tar Pit, it certainly would force Seth to have the Deceiver Exarch. That said, Seth may already be forced to have the Deceiver Exarch.
Yeah, and this is the kind of spot where, you know, Gerard would like to find a piece of disruption. Activating Tassiger is no guarantee that that happens, because if he just flips over something that's not that impactful, even at this point, Snapcaster Mage doesn't necessarily facilitate anything.
If Gerard has a land, Snapcaster Mage actually, he could activate it, and then if he gets the Mage, play a land that he was, you know, sandbagging. There are lines, but...
Yeah, right now what Gerard's looking for is, do I have a line of play other than fire up Creeping Tar Pit and hope for the best?
That said, we know actually that Seth still has both Dispel and Remand in his hand, so really, Counter War isn't going to go well for Gerard here.
Yeah, and I think he's drawing the same conclusion.
Yeah, let's make him have the Exarch. Activates the Creeping Tar Pit. Snapcaster Mage is the play for Seth. And he's going to have a Cryptic Command, so he's going to get to survive for another turn, go to 9. Doesn't have the combo yet, but he's going to get some chances to find it.
He gets a lot of looks.
And talking a lot about how this has been a great matchup for Gerard, can't also speak to the fact that Seth doing a great job of just staying alive long enough to try to combo.
A lot of matchups look a lot different when you have 2 incredibly skilled players going at it.
Here's Cryptic Command from Seth. It'll tap the team and draw a card.
I think both of these players would say this matchup is good for me because they're typically playing against players much worse.
Well, I don't know if Seth can say that because I'm not sure Seth really plays against Sultai all the time. But
sure, if this was just a deck list that popped up in a tournament.
Completely agree. No targeting on the Cryptic Command, so Gerard's just going to need to have a counter spell, which he doesn't. So team's taps, Seth draws a card, and he'll take 0 this turn. And Gerard, he'll play that other Tarmogoyf, play land number 8, and pass. So Seth gets to survive for another turn. However, we may get to the point that 1 Deceiver Exarch is not enough to stop Seth from taking 9. He can chump with Snapcaster Mage, but if the Deceiver Exarch, if he has a Deceiver Exarch and say Gerard just draws a kill spell, for example, of any sort, he could just blow up the Snapcaster Mage and just have a lethal attack here.
Exactly. I think Gerard's game plan here is that what would be ideal is finding an Abrupt Decay. That's a huge piece of insurance. Failing that, try to put Seth in a position where he's forced to chump block with the Deceiver Exarch. If Gerard can get to that spot as well, that's totally fine.
Yeah. At the point that Seth loses a Deceiver Exarch, he probably loses the game with it. We'll see Desolate Lighthouse from Seth. If he finds an Exarch and has a land in hand, he can still make it.
Yeah.
But he needs to know that ahead of time so that he'd know to keep the land.
This is a good feeling if you're Gerard. It means Seth naturally doesn't
have
already have it right now, and he's digging.
No, it also means he has no more Cryptic Commands in his hand to just continue to fog the game. And now pressure is on Seth Manfield, discarding Steam Vents. Can he stay alive another turn? the Snapcaster on the board is not enough. He'll play Tectonic Edge. 3 lands up. It's enough to represent an Exarch.
Well, Tectonic Edge is also fine here, as it means that he can Tectonic Edge the Creeping Tar Pit, chump block one of the creatures.
Right. At that point, however, then the Deceiver Exarch next turn does not keep him alive.
Right.
You would need something like Cryptic Command tapping your team and draw Deceiver Exarch off the Cryptic Command.
Yeah, with Cryptic Command available in the deck, there's always running draws that can be cobbled together into a kill.
But what used to be an out of just drawing Exarch is now becoming a much smaller out of running Cryptics. Here's a swing from Gerard, 2 Tarmogoyfs and a Tasigur. Snapcaster Mage will jump in front of Tasigur. Now, one question I would ask, is there a chance if Gerard mills 4 cards, could he get 2 new creature types and 2 new card types in the yard?
I think it's pretty tough unless he left his Ashiok's in, which I mean, I know Gerard loves an Ashiok, but
sure,
this is not Ashiok's matchup.
All right, Seth goes down to 3. Tasigur gets chumped.
And because it's Tasigur that's involved in the equation, Seth can always just pull the relevant card.
You have to mill like 2 Ashioks.
Right.
Yeah, it's too much. And Tectonic Edge, it looks like it's going to, take care of Creeping Tar Pit. May use that to activate a Tasigur. Be efficient with his mana.
Yeah, I mean, he's got 8 total mana, so it seems like a fine spot.
Then actually, a lot of really decent cards in his graveyard right now. I believe the options are Snapcaster Mage, Mana Leak, and Abrupt Decay. So Seth is kind of running out of losers to give Gerard. I'm glad Gerard can always mill 1.
And Gerard just trying to be very careful with the way the mana gets tapped here.
And here we see a mill of 2. The first one is Inquisition of Kozilek. The next one is Mana Leak. I guess if Seth's hope is to draw Cryptic into Deceiver Exarch, he can give him the Inquisition.
Correct, because then Splinter Twin is still, in this hypothetical world, Splinter Twin is still a live draw.
Right, and it does not work, and there you have it. Gerard Fabiano does pull through, and 2-1 defeats Seth Manfield, and he is your Star City Games Baltimore Open champion.
Our first ever modern Open Series event, Gerard Fabiano, winner of an Open earlier this year, winner of a Grand Prix in 2014 in this very city. Naturally, the first ever Standard Open, Legacy Open, and Modern Open Series winner. He's been almost on his own island